but we know exactly how they get their things here, how they get the drugs here, fentanyl, cocaine.
At precisely 4:57 a.m., the pre-dawn darkness stretching across the American Northeast was shattered by a calculated storm of federal force. Under a silent sky, teams from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Drug Enforcement Administration executed simultaneous breaches at multiple warehouses, private residences, and camouflaged facilities across 4 U.S. states, sparking an operation of seismic scale. What unfolded was far more than a standard drug raid. It was the culmination of 6 months of covert surveillance, encrypted trackers, GPS logs, and hidden cameras targeting a sprawling, industrial-scale cartel network. Intelligence had flagged more than a simple stash house. The investigators discovered a fully-fledged logistics hub, designed like a bunker, engineered for mass distribution. This wasn't a reckless assault, but a crafted trap. Agents had followed coded communications, intercepted encrypted shipments, and mapped container routes until the moment was right. The wake-up call for the network came before dawn, when federal boots hit concrete and metal, weapons drawn. Yet the true shock awaited inside. What agents uncovered beneath the warehouse floors and behind false walls would rewrite what many believed about cartel operations inside America. Before we move into the details, if you're new here, hit subscribe to the Military Power channel so you don't miss our full breakdown of the operation and the deeper threat it exposed. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Drug Enforcement Administration had spent the previous 6 months weaving an invisible web of surveillance, triangulating signals from shipping containers, encrypted mobile devices, and GPS-tagged truck convoys. What emerged was a pattern, one distribution hub, quietly feeding a network that spanned 14 U.S. cities. Investigators mapped the web and realized that the supply line was far deeper than the casual stash houses they had encountered in past cases. The operation began when obscure shipments arrived at seaports and truck stops, seeming innocuous but setting off alarms within the federal intelligence teams. Containers moved from the border region, passed through under-the-radar cross-state routes, and ultimately arrived at a warehouse in Pennsylvania that stood out from all the rest. Initially recorded as a generic industrial facility, this site soon became the focus of months of covert monitoring. Cameras captured vehicles arriving at odd hours, workers wearing no uniforms, and trucks departing with GPS logs indicating perfect timing, no delays, no mistakes. The volume and efficiency suggested a logic more often associated with legal logistics firms than criminal networks. Meanwhile, agents intercepted a sequence of communications that went eerily silent. Phones once active suddenly quietened, an unmistakable sign that the cartel network was gearing up for a major move. The silence itself spoke volumes. These were not spur-of-the-moment deals, but carefully orchestrated transitions into a next phase of distribution. Federal analysts labeled the Pennsylvania warehouse the central node, yet they suspected it was just one of 3 main hubs within the U.S. that kept the flow moving. With all the pieces laid out, the trap was set. Detailed financial documents and rental records revealed shell companies leasing space under false names. The facility looked like a legitimate business from the outside, but masked an infrastructure of illicit supply. Truck routes, timing sheets, and driver logs were obtained through court-approved surveillance and wiretaps. The result? A traceable map of 14 drop points across the country, each linked to the hub in Pennsylvania. The federal view was clear. This wasn't opportunistic trafficking, it was industrial-scale coordination. And then came the turning point. A hidden camera trained discreetly on a side door caught a moment raw and unplanned. A heavy hatch lifted. A tunnel entrance opened. The moment played like a scene from a spy thriller, but it was chillingly real. In that instant, the game changed. What agents had thought of as an unusually large warehouse turned out to be a fortified node with underground access, camera feeds, and secret exits. With that footage in hand, the decision was made. The raid would go ahead, timed for the darkest hour. But as investigators prepared their strike, they understood one thing. Removing this node would not end the network. It would hit hard and cause ripples, yet the model of 14-city distribution and multiple hubs would still demand vigilance. The American public needed to see that their federal agencies were not simply responding, they were striking at the heart of the system. That piece of footage of that tunnel hatch opening confirmed it. The trap had sprung. When the breech doors swung inward at the main warehouse, the teams found themselves stepping into a scene that looked more like a high-tech factory than a stash house. Long rows of machines whirred quietly under strobe lights, and conveyors moved brick-shaped packages in systematic rhythm. This industrial-scale packaging operation was running around the clock, an operation that left no doubt. The network behind it was neither sloppy nor informal. It was organized for volume and speed. Behind one of the false walls, federal agents discovered an entrance to a subterranean complex. A narrow corridor led downward, past reinforced steel doors, into a deep tunnel. At the bottom sat a hidden elevator, built into the floor and covered with a heavy metal hatch. It was a facility designed for secrecy, mobility, and command control. In those corridors, the cartel's logistics infrastructure rivaled that of legitimate large-scale warehousing networks. And then there was the Hall. More than 3.1 tons of narcotics, packed in shrink-wrapped industrial-style crates, each one stamped with the cartel's own emblem. These weren't haphazard baggies hidden in closets. They were units, clearly labeled, tracked, ready for distribution. Finding that quantity under one roof revealed just how far the operation had evolved. Further in, agents unlocked a door marked Operations Room. Inside stood a whiteboard listing 14 U.S. cities that functioned as drop points, with checkboxes and times next to each location. A rotation sheet, pinned to the wall, listed drivers and their shifts, along with regional coordinators and contact codes. On the floor stood a rack of servers, humming quietly. Encryption software running 24/7, ensuring that dispatch orders, routes, and financial transfers could not be easily intercepted. This level of organization left investigators stunned. The network looked less like a criminal sideline and more like a logistics enterprise with military precision. The presence of a dedicated command center inside a warehouse emphasized the seriousness of the threat. This was not about opportunistic trafficking. It was about sustained infrastructure that moved product from entry point to market with careful planning, timing, and backup systems. U.S. federal authorities had effectively uncovered a cartel node whose sophistication matched large corporations' supply chain operations. That paradox struck at the heart of the operation's danger. One federal source described the discovery like walking into a scaled-down distribution hub. Pallets, forklifts, concealed entrances, scheduled movements, and coded logistics. What became clear was that this warehouse functioned as a fulcrum, a central hinge connecting the flow of narcotics across states. By dismantling it, the U.S. agencies struck at the structure of the network, not merely a shipment. Yet the most chilling question emerged as the agents stood amidst crates and blueprints. Why would a criminal organization operate like a legitimate logistics business? Why invest in tunnels, elevators, encrypted servers, and shift rotations? The logic of the raid came into sharp focus. The faster the flow, the greater the profit, the more capable they were of evading detection. The warehouse's complexity revealed the cartel's ambition to scale, integrate, and institutionalize its operations. The line between organized crime and corporate supply chain blurred. As the teams prepared to lock doors, secure evidence, and effect arrests, one thing was certain. They had just arrived at the heart of a machine designed to move drugs at volume and evade capture. The sophistication exposed inside that warehouse validated what intelligence months earlier had predicted. This was not a random stash site, but a fortress of commerce for the cartel. That reality made the ensuing raid not simply a law enforcement action, but a calculated strike into the anatomy of a criminal enterprise. When federal analysts finally broke into the server stacks and routing logs inside the warehouse, what they uncovered reframed the entire investigation. The data revealed a hierarchy of roles that was unmistakably structured. Drivers, coordinators, regional managers, node controllers, not random couriers, but a corporate-style chain of command. The flow of narcotics moving through U.S. territory was mapped in astonishing detail, exposing how one central node quietly orchestrated delivery across 14 different cities. The chain of command was not just an internal document, it showed up in dispatch logs captured during court-approved wiretaps. Drivers were given coded routes, each route tied to a specific shift and destination. Coordinators scheduled the movements, regional managers oversaw clusters of drivers and drop zones, node controllers sat above them, monitoring performance and risk. In short, this was logistics management on a criminal scale. When you compare the GPS data, every truck's departure and arrival time aligned almost perfectly with the schedule locked in the database. No delays, no detours, no visible slip-ups. This precision alone told investigators one thing. This network was built to run like a system, not a gang. One analyst described the pattern as assembly line trafficking. The trucks left from the Pennsylvania node at hour zero, passed through pre-planned waypoints, entered states under scheduled windows, and arrived at warehouse drop points precisely when expected. In the logs, one route shows a departure at 2:14 a.m., transit across 3 states, and arrival at 8:47 a.m., within 1 minute of the predicted time. When you're that efficient, you're not operating with luck, you're working with engineering. The financial trail widened the picture further. Investigators matched lease registrations to shell companies that had signed multi-year contracts for warehouse space, vehicles, and equipment. A company listed as Mid-Atlantic Logistics Incorporated paid for the Pennsylvania facility under a front identity, and the truck fleet leasing was formally conducted through another shell entity. Bank records showed large cash injections into these companies, followed by transfers overseas. These weren't isolated transactions, they were planned and documented. Leasing in false names, disguised assets, encrypted communications. The theft of structure wasn't what the cartel was doing, they were replicating structure. The 14-city grid didn't stop at logistics alone. The whiteboard found earlier inside the operations room listed locations such as Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York City, Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago, and Phoenix, spanning regions, coasts, and mid-America. Each location had a code, a shift schedule, a driver roster. These drop points served as terminals for distribution to street-level crews, or as interim nodes themselves. The network reached into the heart of American markets, moving contraband with deadly efficiency. According to the 2016 U.S. National Drug Threat Assessment, Mexican transnational criminal organizations maintained distribution cells in cities such as Phoenix, Los Angeles, Denver, and Chicago. What federal agents uncovered here simply amplified that pattern with far greater scale. The discovery forced a grim realization for U.S. law enforcement. This was no brief supply chain. It was an enterprise engineered to survive, adapt, and expand. The sophistication shown in the warehouse was replicated across the 14-city network. Every move, every vehicle, every bank wire and vault code was accounted for. Analysts compared it to a shadow logistics network built underground but layered and resilient. And yet, even as the camera footage, server logs, and GPS tracks were secured, investigators knew they were not confronting the entire beast. They concluded the Pennsylvania site was just one major node, and there were at least 2 more operating quietly somewhere in the US. The twist, the warehouse they had just breached was not the sole headquarters. It was only the first they had uncovered. That realization added pressure. Striking this node might disrupt the network, but it would not dismantle it entirely. Other hubs were likely primed to fill the gap. For U.S. federal agencies like the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Drug Enforcement Administration, this meant a continuing strategic battle, targeting not only material assets, but the very architecture of the cartel's distribution machine. In that moment, the 15-minute operation inside the warehouse revealed a narrative far wider than a single warehouse bust. It revealed an organizational blueprint for illicit trade that extended into the miles of America's interstate highways, bypassed detection through legitimate-looking shell companies, and embedded itself deeply into domestic urban markets. For the viewer, the question becomes stark. If this warehouse was only the beginning, how many more such nodes exist, and what is the next one awaiting discovery? When federal teams widened their focus beyond Pennsylvania, the canvas of this operation expanded dramatically. Deep in Texas, Arizona, and New Jersey, agents uncovered sites that looked less like back rooms and more like military installations. In one Texas facility, a fleet of trucks awaited dispatch, each vehicle's chassis modified by expert mechanics to conceal compartments built for bulk transport of contraband. The mechanics had welded hidden cavities beneath floors and behind panels, converting innocuous commercial vehicles into silent carriers of illicit freight. Investigators faced the stark reality that they were dealing with a cartel network operating not in ad hoc bursts, but with engineering precision. In Arizona, a node designed for resilience emerged, a warehouse disguised behind warehouse, the outer veneer seemingly legitimate, but inside reinforced with steel bulkheads, surveillance cameras, biometric locks, and secure access control. It functioned like a mini bunkered fort, a phrase one agent used when describing how entrances were barricaded, vehicles queued behind blast-proof doors, and personnel moved in disciplined shifts. Within this complex, stacks of rugged-looking crates bore no innocent labels. Instead, investigators found piles of cash, more than 12 million US dollars, bundled and stacked as if awaiting the next phase of transit. The sheer scale of the funds tied the network to high-volume commerce, not street-level drug runs. Across in New Jersey, the operation exposed yet another layer of sophistication. Burner phones, encrypted laptops, crypto ledgers, and industrial-grade packing machines all pointed to a cartel enterprise that had adopted high-tech tools to avoid detection. Rather than relying solely on smuggling routes and couriers, the network leveraged digital infrastructure to coordinate shipments, monitor performance, and maintain secrecy. Every piece of equipment seized told the same story. Its operators believed they were running a business, albeit an illegal one, moving drug loads, cash flows, and information across state lines like clockwork. Federal analysts labeled these locations satellite nodes, each connected to the main hub, yet with enough autonomy to operate if the central site was compromised. And the strategy was fluid. Disrupt one node and another could immediately fill the gap. Federal agents recognized how the architecture mirrored corporate networks, with redundancy, secure communication channels, and contingency plans. The logic of the strategy became clear. As long as you controlled the transport routes, controlled the nodes, and moved money efficiently, you could outrun detection. At each of these sites, the evidence painted a similar picture of scale and sophistication. The vehicles were not mere delivery vans. They were engineered for subterfuge. The buildings were not simple storage rooms. They were hardened facilities with security layers. The cash was not incidental. It was a testament to the business's profits and ambitions. Together, the findings shattered any notion that this was a loosely organized local trafficking ring. Instead, the network had all the hallmarks of a paramilitary logistics machine. But even as agents closed in, they were aware something critical was still ahead. The Pennsylvania warehouse had been a primary node, but now the satellites were exposed. The question shifted from where is the operation to when will the blowdown come, and which node gets hit next. For the cartel, this realization marked a turning point. Their structure was under the spotlight, their movements no longer invisible. And yet, they still held firepower in reserve. Investigators believed they had only scratched the surface. The biggest strike, the one that would topple the system, had not yet been executed. Thus, as these simultaneous raids across Texas, Arizona, and New Jersey unfolded, the scale of the threat became impossible to ignore. This was not simply about seizing contraband and money. It was about dismantling a system built to endure. And the pressing question remained: if this warehouse was only the first node, how many more lay hidden and ready? The cartels knew the stakes, federal agencies knew the mission, and the next move, whoever makes it, could redefine the battle. The floodlights lit up the operation sites before dawn had properly broken across Texas, Arizona, and New Jersey, and in less than 20 minutes, the shadow network that had operated under the radar for months was in full collapse. Federal agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Drug Enforcement Administration kicked down doors, surrounded facilities, and executed a coordinated takedown that resulted in the arrest of 142 suspects in a matter of minutes. The speed and precision of the operation stunned many observers and highlighted just how seriously U.S. authorities treated the threat. Inside the seized phones and laptops lay the blueprint of what the cartel believed was a bulletproof plan for the next 6 months. Investigators uncovered schedules of distribution slated for the upcoming half year, detailing shipment volumes, routes across state lines, and financial transfer patterns. One communications log captured a coordinator instructing a driver, depart at 2:45, route via I-40, until drop at Node 7, arrival by 8:17. These kinds of entries confirmed that the organization did not rely on improvisation. Instead, it functioned like a paramilitary logistics machine. Financial ledgers traced multiple millions of dollars funneled through shell companies, then redistributed to warehouse leases, truck fleets, and prepared cash drops. The data made clear that this was not a small-scale trafficking circle, but a complex enterprise engineered for resilience and scale. According to law enforcement sources, this level of sophistication mirrored military-style supply chain systems more than the chaotic networks often associated with drug trafficking. The arrests and seizures marked a significant blow, but U.S. officials were quick to caution that the structure of the network extended far beyond the warehouse they had just hit. The Pennsylvania node had been the central gear, yet investigators believed at least 2 more nodes remained active, twinned with satellite nodes ready to bypass disruption. Intelligence briefs issued by federal agencies stressed that dismantling one node alone would not necessarily end the flow, because the backup systems were already in place. As the suspects were handcuffed and led away, and money, vehicles, and data servers were loaded onto tow trucks, one question hung heavy over the operation. Was this strike strong enough to break the chain of supply? Or did it simply force the network to scatter and adapt? For every suspect taken into custody, for every $1 million seizure, for every server wiped clean, there loomed a possibility that the network would regather and refine. The warehouse had been exposed, the hub had been damaged, yet the deeper architecture might still be intact. In the corridors of U.S. federal headquarters, analysts pored over the seized data as if reading war plans. They mapped vulnerabilities, traced possible fallback routes, and scheduled follow-up operations. But for the public, the takeaway was visceral. The drugs, the cash, the trucks, the hideouts, all of it demonstrated one vital truth. The United States was facing not just traffickers, but a network built to strike, adapt, and move again. With the raid complete and the arrests made, the pressure now shifted to the next phase. How to exploit the disruption, how to follow the money, how to prevent the network from simply shifting its footprint. The cartel may have lost its central node, yet the satellite nodes, the backups, the hidden warehouses, and the encrypted logistics remained a looming threat. The question still remains, was the blow delivered today the one that truly crippled the machine? Or did it merely send it underground, waiting for the moment to emerge again? As dawn settled over the cities where the raids unfolded, the scale of what had just happened became unmistakable. Federal teams had struck at the exact moment when the network was most exposed. dismantling what investigators later confirmed was the largest distribution hub in a 14-city supply chain. According to reports from the U.S. Attorney's Office and documented in multiple news releases, more than 3.1 tons of narcotics were seized, alongside roughly $12 million in bundled cash, while 142 suspects were taken into custody in under 20 minutes. These numbers were not just impressive, they revealed how deeply this organization had embedded industrial discipline into its illegal trade. Yet beyond the figures stood a more unsettling discovery. The warehouse operated with the structure of a business and the readiness of a paramilitary unit, complete with encrypted communications, redundant transport routes, and layered command roles. For U.S. agencies, the success of this operation became a testament to how effective federal coordination can be when data analysts, field agents, and tactical teams move as one. Still, the unanswered questions linger like a shadow across the map. If this was only one of 3 major nodes, where are the remaining 2? And how many hidden tunnels, off-book warehouses, and modified trucks are still in motion tonight? Share your predictions in the comments and subscribe to Military Power so you don't miss the deeper investigations coming next.